After finishing my sales rounds, I returned to the office to find it empty. Most of the lights were off. I always thought sales jobs required more motivation and hard work, but this department seems dead. Neither the director nor the manager seems motivated at all. They leave for a brief sales call, return soon after, and just relax with a cup of coffee. 2 years ago, a lively new recruit joined this place. A recent university graduate named Ethan Mitchell. He's 3 years younger than me and brings some energy to our otherwise dreary days.
I'm back.
While I was organizing the client information from today's visits, I heard Ethan's tired voice echoing in the empty office. "Hey, good job out there." I greeted my junior colleague with a stretched out voice.
Wait, is it just you, Don? Did everyone else already leave?
He looked at me with a surprised expression. I forced a smile and nodded.
Don, I'm starting to get worried about this department.
Setting his bag on the desk and taking a seat, Ethan leaned back in his chair. I feel the same way, I agreed, typing away on my computer. I've been thinking about finding a new job lately. Upon hearing this, Ethan shot up from his chair.
Hold on, Don. Seriously, that'd be a problem.
But I don't want to waste my time here. I get that, Ethan said, sitting back down. And then he booted up his computer.
Right, makes sense.
He murmured in a soft voice. You too, huh? I shifted my gaze from my computer to Ethan. He looked back at me with a disheartened expression.
It's tough to find any job satisfaction in this department, don't you think?
I couldn't help but nod in agreement.
If you leave, Don, I can't handle this department on my own.
It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Ethan and I run the department.
But isn't it a bad look to switch jobs just 2 years out of university? Don't they say give it at least 3 years or something?
Ethan had a point. Still, my motivation for this job was downhill.
It might be okay for you, Don, since you've been here for 5 years, but for me.
When did this become such a lifeless department? Looking back, it started about a year ago. That's when our current director came in. He seemed unhappy with the transfer from the planning department to sales. Ethan has only known this unmotivated sales department for a year. Hey, maybe you should think about finding a new job too. You've got a knack for sales, you know? Ethan nodded slightly as he began to organize his client information.
If you're considering a new job, Don, maybe I should too.
He sounded unsure. Oh, by the way, I remembered something. Isn't your father a CEO, Ethan? Saying that, Ethan laughed weakly.
Well, he's a CEO after all.
Seeing his exhausted expression, I decided not to continue on that topic. There must be something going on with his family. I changed the topic to lighten the mood. By the way, are you prepared for the client meeting day after tomorrow? This time, I've left all the preparations for the client meeting to Ethan.
It's my first time handling everything, so I'm a bit nervous. I heard the director at the client's place loves fish, so I chose a traditional restaurant.
Good choice. They're a big client, so it'd be great if we can seal the deal. Let's give it our best. When I said that, Ethan gave a big smile. On the day of the meeting, Ethan and I arrived early at the restaurant we'd reserved. We checked out the restroom and had a brief chat with the staff, and then waited for our clients. It took Ethan several visits to get this client to even look at our materials, and finally secure this meeting. After waiting for quite some time, the client arrived considerably later than planned. It seemed like they didn't consider our meeting important.
This is the place. I don't really like this restaurant. It's not to my taste.
Hearing his first words, I sighed internally. He looked down on us, treating us like we were beneath him. I glanced at Ethan, and he gave a wry smile.
Mr. Smith, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
As Ethan shook Mr. Smith's hand in respect, I did the same. It seemed Ethan was a bit flustered. I prepared a business card and handed it to Mr. Smith. Nice to meet you. I'm Don Robinson from the sales department. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day for this meeting. Mr. Smith looked annoyed as he took the card and passed it to Mr. Taylor beside him. Mr. Taylor managed a stiff smile.
Is Mr. Thompson not joining us today?
I realized from Ethan's words. It seemed Mr. Smith wasn't originally planned to attend.
Thompson wasn't feeling well, so I made the effort to come. You should be grateful.
I was taken aback by Mr. Smith's arrogant attitude. I've met many people like him in sales, but it was disheartening knowing he's a top executive. When the food was served, Mr. Smith sneered.
Is this the best this place has? Who chose this restaurant?
The question was directed at me, but Ethan intervened.
Well, I chose this place. I hope it meets your expectations.
I prefer meat. I don't like nibbling on fish.
Mr. Taylor, sitting next to him, wiped sweat from his forehead. We continued with small talk and ate. Ethan seemed tense, and the conversation was choppy.
What kind of meal is this? It's not enjoyable at all.
The one who broke the silence was Mr. Smith. I stepped in for Ethan. Have you had a chance to review our product materials? Mr. Smith shook his head dismissively.
Taylor has gone through them, so it should be fine.
Mr. Taylor nodded when mentioned.
Yes, the materials were well prepared. I'm considering a contract.
Ethan's smile returned. Seeing that, I felt a wave of relief. However, just then, Mr. Smith, the senior executive, interjected.
Who put this presentation together?
Ethan replied, I did.
And how long have you been in sales?
Ethan answered, 2 years. Mr. Smith scoffed, letting out a condescending chuckle.
So you're telling me that some greenhorn who's only been in sales for 2 years made this presentation? You probably just copied it from another presentation, didn't you?
I clenched the glass in my hand, feeling a surge of anger. I knew how much time Ethan had spent on this client's presentation. He worked late every day, revised it multiple times, and consulted with me, giving it his all. And Mr. Smith was dismissing all that without a clue.
Mr. Smith, Ethan's presentation is well prepared and
Mr. Taylor, the department head, tried to intervene, but it seemed to fall on deaf ears.
Taylor, you're seriously incompetent. You can't even differentiate between good and bad work. You're unfit for your title.
Everyone was reprimanded, and the atmosphere in the room was tense.
Ethan, was it? If you want to do business with my company, you better step up your game. Maybe come back when you've learned a thing or two. We're just not on the same level.
Hearing Mr. Smith's words, I found myself reacting instinctively.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Before I realized it, I had thrown my beer at Mr. Smith.
Don, what the hell?
Both Ethan and Mr. Taylor were taken aback by my sudden outburst.
You're gonna pay for this. I'm reporting this to your company.
As he yelled and pointed at me, Mr. Smith looked absurd.
I wouldn't sign a deal with your company if you were the last one on Earth. Remember that.
Leaving behind a biting remark, Mr. Smith stormed out of the room.
Mr. Smith.
Both Ethan and Mr. Taylor tried to follow him, but I ignored them, taking a big gulp of my beer. Oh, that felt good. I mumbled to myself as I waited for Ethan, hearing his hurried footsteps coming back to our table.
Don, what the heck did you do?
I'm sorry, Ethan. I ruined our chances at closing that deal. Hearing my words, Ethan slumped in his chair.
But more than that.
I'm probably getting fired. A dry, humorless laugh bubbled up from within me. The gravity of what I'd done was sinking in, but there was no undoing it.
You defended me, didn't you?
Ethan looked down, sipping his beer. I just couldn't stand it. He thinks he knows everything about you, but knows nothing. And he was talking down to you, and it just made me mad.
So, it's my fault after all.
I chuckled and playfully ruffled Ethan's hair. Well, what's done is done. Let's enjoy the night, have some good food, and head home. We weakly clinked our glasses together in a toast. A few days later, I was let go. I had to clean out my desk. I was called in early by the CEO and was told that if I wasn't fired, Smith's company would sever all contracts with ours. This would be a significant loss for our company. It was framed as a voluntary resignation. My only concern was leaving Ethan alone in a demotivated department.
Don, are you really leaving?
Ethan approached me with a look on his face like a lost puppy. It worked out for me. I was considering a job change anyway. When I said that, tears filled Ethan's eyes, and he shook his head.
It's my fault. I'll talk to the boss.
I grabbed his arm to stop him. Listen, Ethan, I truly believe it's okay. I messed up with your important client. I should be the one apologizing, right? Don't worry, I'll let you know once I find a new job. After hearing this, Ethan nodded with tears streaming down his face, looking resigned. A month after resigning, I hadn't found a workplace where I truly felt I belonged. Another day with no leads. I murmured as I headed back to my room. As I checked the mail in my room, a postcard caught my eye. The sender was Johnson Holdings, a renowned publicly traded company in the IT sector. I was surprised and flipped the postcard. It mentioned they wanted to meet for an interview, and I scratched my head, not understanding why. They want to interview me. Why would such a big-name company want to? I wasn't sure what was going on, but I decided to go for the interview on the date and time mentioned. If there's an opportunity, I'd grab it. That's what I thought, looking at the postcard. On the day of the interview, I stood in front of Johnson Holdings. When I showed the postcard at the reception, they quickly led me to a meeting room. I knocked and heard a voice saying, "Come in." There, waiting for me, was the famous Mr. Johnson.
I've been waiting for you.
I was motioned to sit on the sofa, and I said, "Thank you," before taking a seat.
You're Don Robinson, right?
I nodded, saying yes. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today." CEO laughed gently and said, "The pleasure is mine." He seemed like a kind person. He reminded me of someone, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Why did you invite me here today?" Looking a bit puzzled by my question, CEO replied.
I heard about a promising candidate from someone.
Clearing his throat, CEO gave a small smile. I couldn't think of anyone who'd recommend me to such a renowned company. Feeling out of place, I asked CEO, "Please be honest with me. This situation doesn't seem realistic at all. Even I can see that." CEO took a sip of his tea, looking a bit troubled.
It's hard for me to fake things.
I was puzzled by his words and tilted my head in confusion.
I promise not to disclose this, but, Don, do you know Ethan Mitchell?
I nodded. He was the important junior colleague I messed up with.
That Ethan Mitchell is my son.
What? I blurted out in shock.
When Ethan was in high school, I divorced his mother. I wanted him to take over this company, but when he graduated from university, he refused.
CEO said with a weary smile. I see. So that's why he didn't like being asked about his parents.
I'm aware of my selfishness. I've left everything concerning Ethan to my ex-wife, and never really acted like a father should.
All I could do was listen.
But the other day, Ethan suddenly showed up at my place.
Ethan came to him and said he'd rather have me scouted for this company instead of him taking over. Why would? I didn't understand why Ethan would go to such lengths for me.
He said if it wasn't for you, he would have gone along with everyone else and turned out to be a lost cause. It's because of you that he's who he is now.
He said that. Seeing my surprise, the CEO asked, setting Ethan's story aside, "Do you like working in sales?" I confidently nodded. "Of course I do. It's a job where I can make people happy with our amazing products." Hearing my answer, CEO nodded in agreement.
All right then, Don. How about working for this company? I want to work with you. What do you think?
Such an opportunity might never come again. Ethan's face flashed before my eyes, and I smiled. Ethan had put everything on the line to plead to his father for me. Wasting this opportunity would be letting Ethan down. Mr. Johnson, I might not be the best fit for such a big company, but I want to live up to Ethan's expectation. With that, CEO gave a warm smile and extended his hand. I'm back. I secured a deal and returned to my department. It's been 6 months since I joined Johnson Holdings. I still have a lot to prove.
Don, you're back. How was the deal?
I nailed it. As I said that, there was applause throughout the department. The sales department where I was placed was full of energy, nothing like my previous workplace.
Don, could you check this document for me?
The one who asked was Ethan. Due to my joining the company, the agreement between Ethan and his father was fulfilled, and now he also worked in the same company. It seems he's still hiding the fact that he's CEO's son. Got it. I'll review it. Go ahead and set up the appointment with the client. With shining eyes, Ethan nodded in agreement. Indeed, a fulfilling workplace makes a world of difference. Seeing Ethan working hard genuinely made me happy. If it weren't for Ethan, I'd probably be in a much worse place. Thanks, Ethan.
For what?
He looked puzzled. I owe Ethan a big time. He saved me. In my mind, I've always seen Ethan as a rival. Having such a great rival motivates me to work even harder. Ethan, the afternoon meeting's about to start. Hearing that, a cheerful shout from Ethan echoed throughout the office.